He is going for broke. Drew Pearson. He got it. Touchdown.
All right. Welcome into Now Bout Them Cowboys. This is part of the Toilets to Titles Network, Real Ones Productions Company. And I am here today to discuss the 2023 NFL Draft with my guy, fellow Cowboys man, fellow member of Cowboys Nation, Mr. Andrew Campey. Camp, what's cooking?
Well, I was just watching the intro and thought to myself, yeah, we don't have any defensive tackle work on there, do we?
No. I thought myself too that I didn't want to, this is a little bit of a teaser of what we're going to talk about later, but that last clip, I don't know if we're going to see exactly the same thing in the future, but we might be seeing something similar because I wouldn't be surprised. So if you're coming in late, I wouldn't be surprised if that man comes back, Ezekiel Elliott. And when Kyle Yeomans was on a few weeks ago, who might be coming on next week, he's getting married May 7th. Shout out to Kyle Yeomans. Congratulations. He's been super busy, so he might not be able to fit it in his schedule. We've been chatting. But when I said I think Zeke's coming back like a month ago, he was super shocked. But at this point, nothing they did in the draft makes me think he will not come back. Maybe something they did post-draft in the the UDFA, the undrafted free agents. There's a power player there, but I don't think anybody necessarily fills that shoes. But I posted this morning on Twitter the GIF from the Lord of the Rings when Frodo throws the ring into Mordor and he's like, it's done. That's how I feel after the completion of our NFL draft coverage, like starting with the player profile, starting with the organization, starting with the shorts and just everything we've done for it to be completed and now to begin the next stage of the offseason is pretty damn exciting. I know we're going to get into this more deeply, but what was your overall feeling about the 2023 NFL Draft?
Look, from a football fan point of view, it was pretty amazing, wasn't it? It was just there was so much intrigue on that first day. Just some of the weird stuff that was going on was quite amazing. But as a Cowboys fan, it's I think a lot of people out there are feeling a bit sort of underwhelmed at the moment regarding how it all went. But I think a lot of us are of that kind of opinion of sort of, in will we trust kind of thing and think, well, the scouting department's done it before. What's to say they're not going to do it again?
Holy cow, was it defensive heavy. Like Dan Quinn absolutely dominated that draft. And we're going to get into it, but I want to let everybody know, however you're listening to this, it'd be greatly appreciated if you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, check us out on Apple Podcasts. If you comment on here enough and you enjoy the show enough, let us know if you want this audio platform. I haven't been uploading this on audio platform. Our normal shows are on there, Toilets to Titles, Head to Head. We have, I want to say like 3 or 4 shows a week that get uploaded audio style. But if you think you'd like this on the audio platform, I'll start throwing this up on Apple Podcasts. And we got a meeting tonight. Maybe we'll discuss that. Maybe I'll just start throwing everything up there. But let us know in the comments. toiletstitles.com. Tons of content on there. We are absolutely rolling. Campey knows because he's the master behind the website. So he knows how much is going on over there. So go check that out. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/Toilets to Titles. If you watched our draft coverage, you saw Jared Gray was out there at the NFL Draft. If you want to help support us to do things like that so we can bring you live coverage, support the show, patreon.com/Toilets to Titles. And it's rookie draft season. And we are doing tons of rookie drafts. George Reed is the man behind those, the man behind the Mock Draft Laboratory. Get in our Gilded chat if you want to come do some rookie mock drafts with us, Dynasty startup mock drafts. Eventually, we're going to be doing redraft mock drafts. DM me on the Twitter at Coach Sheps or the show at Toilets to Titles, and we will get you in there. And also, Campey, huge Cowboys fan. You want to check him out. He's on the Twitter at Andrew Campey, ANDREWCAMPY. So Camp, from the first round of the NFL draft, before the Cowboys were selecting, what surprised you the most?
What, from a NFL draft point of view or from a Cowboys point of view? I guess
So before the
pick.
Cowboys picked. So it could be like you're a Cowboys fan. So from your perspective, the players maybe you thought wouldn't be there, would be there. So everything that happened before the Cowboys picked, what surprised you the most?
Well, yeah, I don't want to foreshadow a bit of a conversation later, but I was surprised really how long it took for the first wide receiver to go. It seemed to be like there was a couple that were going to go in the first round, and it just sort of seemed that they sort of fell a bit. And to a certain extent, that seemed to happen with the cornerbacks as well. Obviously, with Joey Porter Jr. falling to the second round.
Yes.
So kind of interesting to me. And I thought it was a really gutsy move by Houston to move up and get that third pick. I think we'll probably look back in 12 months' time and say it was a mistake, to give up their first round pick. If they had given up Cleveland, maybe, but it seemed like a lot of value they were giving up to get that third pick. But yeah, like from a NFL fan point of view, it was sort of so fun to see that kind of stuff going on.
I'm with you. It was risky, but it was more risky to take Stroud at 2 than it was to trade up for Will Anderson. I think Will Anderson was one of the most surefire assets, if that's even a term. If not, I made it up for in this class. So to move up for Will, I was comfortable. Give an Alabama edge, linebacker tweener to D'Amico Ryans, build that defense. They already got Derek Stingley. They had a pretty solid draft. So I think they're going for it. I think the more questionable thing is the CJ Stroud selection, but they're going for it. I think they believe they're not going to be picking in the top 15 next year. It's yet to be seen. Clearly, it's a long ways away. But I liked it, but maybe I liked it because we were covering the draft live, and it just made it exciting. And I like D'Amico Ryans, so I like that as well. I want to see him succeed. When you talked about the wide receivers, I was surprised they fell so late, but then I was surprised that 3 went in a row. Quentin Johnson. Or Jackson Smith-Njigba, 4 went in a row. Jackson Smith-Njigba, Quentin Johnson, Zay Flowers, and Jordan Addison. So that was interesting to me. Jack Campbell going 18. But how about Jahmyr Gibbs going 12 to the Detroit Lions? What did you think about that?
It was really fascinating actually, because before the draft we were sort of having internal conversations and we were saying, do you think it'll be 1 or 2 running backs going in the first round? And it was, from my point of view, at least, it was really like a discussion of, is Gibbs going to sort of sneak in maybe that 31st, 32nd pick? So to see him go so high was kind of incredible. And, you look at the first round for the Lions seems like a complete mess. And then, a few people have commented, if you take rounds out of the equation and just show their draft, they actually had a pretty good draft. And
yeah,
I actually said on the day 2 telecast, I said, you have teams that are good and you have teams that are lucky. And I feel like, you look at the Eagles and I feel like the Eagles are a good team. And I feel like Detroit was lucky and, everything, after the first day kind of fell their way. So look, it was a strange pick. Whether or not it pays off, I guess we'll find out. But I think it's going to be questioned for a long time.
The fact they got Brian Branch in the second, who was a top 15 player for me, I think they did well. You said they got lucky. They got lucky 100%. And now, was there any player that went off the board before the Cowboys selected that you were like, thank goodness I didn't want the Cowboys to take him? And not only do the Cowboys not get to take him, it pushes a player down the board to us.
Yeah. And so once again, go back to the wide receivers from my point of view it was sort of getting to that point where they were just all there. And I thought, geez, it's going to be a tough conversation in the war room, isn't it? If they're all still sitting there. I think, in any draft, like, because football these days is so built around the offense and the offense can get away with so much stuff, then if you're sitting there looking at the best wide receiver, having to say no to that, it doesn't matter who, like the Cowboys could have a completely different opinion on who the best was that you and I would have, but whoever they chose as the best wide receiver, to have that guy sitting there like at pick 26, it would have been hard to say no, I would think. So
yes,
part of me sort of had a bit of a sigh of relief when they started going off the board. And it was really interesting because I feel like the wide receivers really kind of set a tone for the draft, where once a couple of players from one position went, then all of a sudden there was a run on it. And I think we saw it with the tight end, which I guess we'll obviously talk about tight ends a bit later.
Yeah.
And then cornerbacks as well. Like I felt like cornerbacks was just sitting there for a while. And then all of a sudden when a couple went, then it seemed like there was a couple more that went in a hurry as well. So
yeah, so I was happy the wide receivers went as well, and foregoing pushed players down to the Cowboys that made me very excited when we were in the clock, like a Joey Porter, like a Nolan Smith, and obviously a Maisie Smith, who we ended up selecting. So I was excited to see them go. I was excited to see Dalton Kincaid go because I was looking for, well, I feel like there's tight end depth in this class, and it went up quick. Like it got scooped up quick, but I felt like the depth, we didn't need to take one right away. And you saw Michael Mayer went in the second. If we really were interested in one of those big name tight ends, we could have moved up in the second round. And I think the Cowboys were comfortable where they picked, and I think they were comfortable with who they selected. But one that stung me was Deonte Banks to the Giants. He's a player like I really liked throughout this draft process. I live in New York. I have tons of Giants fans, friends, and I've been messaging all of them. We did a short on what I thought about Deonte Banks. I shared it with all of them. I said, you guys got a stud. It hurt to see Jalen Carter go to the Eagles. It hurt to see Nolan Smith go to the Eagles. So there were a few selections that made me feel good. There are a few selections that stung, but enough with pre-draft and anything to do with the Cowboys discussion. Let's start talking about the Dallas Cowboys draft. And I heard somebody say this on Twitter, so I cannot take responsibility for this, but this was not a jersey selling draft class, right? So to me, that means Jerry Jones took a back seat, and I don't want to beat the drum or beat a dead horse, rather. That's the correct term. But I believe Jerry Jones, for the most part, has took the back seat in a lot of things over the past 5 to 10 years, and people, it's just cute and it's meme worthy to say that he hasn't, and to say Jerry does this, Jerry does that. Man, it's the Stephen Jones and it's the Will McClay show. All right, that's what it is. It's the player relations. That's Jerry Jones. All right, the family, with the players, that's Jerry Jones. But as far as selecting the players and bringing the players in, he has nothing to do with that. And you could completely see that with this draft class. It was Will McClay, it was Stephen Jones, it was Dan Quinn, it was Mike McCarthy. They wanted to win in the trenches, and I'm so happy they went with this shift, because 2 years ago I was so disgusted when we got bullied by the 49ers in the playoffs. Absolutely bullied. I'm sick and tired of being bullied. Last year, you saw the shift from being bullied to starting to bully. We started to change. We started to ship some people out who didn't have the bully mentality, who didn't live into that, who weren't all in, who weren't football guys. We started to bring in football guys. And then this year, we go and acquire Stephon Gilmore, who is a student of the game. So we're starting to shift. We bring in Jonathan Hankins. Like, we're starting to shift we bring back Donovan Wilson, who's a hungry, aggressive, football guys. And this draft was a football guys draft. So we start out Maisie Smith, defensive tackle and safety were things before we brought in Dan Quinn, before we brought in Mike McCarthy, those were two positions that were neglected, completely neglected. And you see how we feel about safety. Now we go ahead and we start to re-up and reassure that defensive line in the interior. We bring in Maisie Smith. The Cowboys defense was not very good against the run last year. It's the bottom of the barrel. And but regarding Maisie Smith, per John Owning on Twitter, among interior defenders who saw at least 200 snaps last year, the 347 players, Maisie Smith ranked 7th in positively graded play percentage versus the run. So what were your thoughts on the Maisie Smith selection? And then how do you feel, a few days later?
Yeah, well, look, as you said, it's not jersey selling, it's not sexy, but what I found really telling was the footage that came out where they had Micah was, sitting there, having a chat to guys when the announcement came through, and he'd basically been banging the table to get Smith into the building. So he was super happy with the pick. And one of his comments that really got me was right at the end where he said, "No more QB sneak." And it made me really think, like, it is something that, like, the NFL is trying to stamp it out because it is such an issue at the moment that guys, like Hurts can just basically sort of walk in. If they need to get 3 yards, they can get it pretty comfortably. And it's something that's obviously sitting there in the back of the mind of the Cowboys defense, that they really want to be able to stop that kind of thing from happening. They want to make sure that it becomes a 50-50 proposition, essentially, rather than just a sort of, almost guaranteed play for the offense. So I think it's definitely going to add a bit more meat to the defense when we have those kind of short yardage situations, and really start making, hopefully at least, the offense have to really sort of consider what they're doing, rather than just going for those quarterback sneaks. And as you said, if you can sort of like have a guy like Smith who, maybe on, first down, second down, maybe teams aren't getting, 4 yards a carry. Maybe they got dropped down to 3.5. Then all of a sudden it means that, when you start talking about that, third down, then Dan Quinn defense being able to, pin their ears back a bit and have that extra yard, maybe extra 2 yards, like it just opens up so many things. So, he's a player of potential rather than perhaps sort of what he's done in the past. But I think, if it works out well, it's really going to give the defense teeth. And as you said, that's what they're moving towards. They're moving away from just being an offensive team who's going to try and outscore everyone, and they're just trying to really have a bully defense. So, he's a very big man and he's a very powerful man. So you think he's going to help.
Man, 6'3", 323 pounds. He bench pressed 225 34 times. And I like what you said about giving the defense teeth. Now, the defense was 22nd against the run, allowing 124 yards per game. But that's deceiving, because a lot of the time we were ahead, and a lot of the time teams had to turn to throwing the football. So I think if our offense wasn't so strong, we'd probably rank somewhere between 28, 24 and 28. We'd be down a little bit. But like you said, that quarterback sneak, that run up the middle, teams, they just like it took away our will to compete, because there was nothing we could do to stop it. So this adds some beef in the middle. Jonathan Ankins next to him adds some beef. But then you also think about a Leighton Vander Esch, right? And a Damone Clark, two guys who have a history of injury. Okay. These guys are going to keep them clean. When Leighton Vander Esch is running sideline to sideline and he's able to attack downhill and he's free of blocks, he is a very, very good football player. And then you look at Damone Clark. I think he was when they clocked his game speed, he had a mile per hour, I think, in one of the games during the season, chasing somebody down. That was the fastest of the entire defense all season, faster than Micah Parsons. So Damone Clark can move as well. So this is going to keep our linebackers clean, which is going to allow them to run and chase and track down these ball carriers. Shout out to DeAndre Swift, who we're going to see 2 times this season. Well, maybe, depending on whether or not he can stay healthy this season. And it's going to put the defense in the secondary now into third and long situations, like you mentioned, where they're going to have to throw the ball. And we're going to be able to show off our guys like a Stephon Gilmore, a Deron Bland, a Trayvon Diggs. And we're going to be able to get after the quarterback with a Micah Parsons, a DeMarcus Lawrence, and Sam Williams, who looks like the Cowboys are expecting him to take a step, because we didn't go with an edge defender, right? We didn't bring in an edge defender. So they must believe Sam Williams is going to take a step this season. And that was everyone this year was talking about Will McDonald, and that Dan Quinn was out there at his pro day, and that excitement, everyone's got to remember, that was the same excitement we had for Sam Williams last year when Dan Quinn went out there. So he's a Dan Quinn guy. DeMarvion Overshown, I think he'll do some pass rush as well. So let's move on to the next selection, okay? Second round selection, Luke Schoonmaker, tight end out of Michigan, 6'5", 251 pounds, ran a 4.63 40, hell of an athlete, and a 6.813 cone. So this dude is agile. Those are both in the 90th percentiles and up. So he had a 9.86 RAS out of a possible 10, which ranks 16 out of 1,105 tight ends from 1987 to 2023. Think about that. 16 out of 1,105. So this dude is an elite athlete. How do you feel about Luke Schoonmaker?
Yeah, look, I thought it was an interesting move. It really felt like I sort of spoke to you after selection. I said it really kind of felt like we went into the draft saying the Cowboys could take whoever they wanted. They had no real need. Now, I think you can probably I think in hindsight, we probably look back and we think, okay, this maybe, I think probably in 6 months' time, 12 months' time, we'll be sitting there saying, you know what, defensive tackle was a need, and it was probably good they covered it. But I feel like in the second round, they went tight end because they sort of got in their mind, all right, we're taking a tight end in the second round. And there was a few that went before them in the second round, which sort of, I think, made them sort of put their foot down and go, okay, we're going to take one here. But it's really quite interesting. Like more than almost any other position, I feel like with tight end this year, there's a group of guys that we're going to be sitting there and we're going to be reviewing in, 2 years' time, 3 years' time. And it's going to be interesting to see who really comes out on top, because I think any of them could become really productive guys, and any of them could drop off the radar. And as you've talked before, the thing about tight ends is you have guys that have different sort of skill sets. They can, they can be blockers, or they can be receivers, or you can do a bit of both. At least it sounds like the Cowboys got one who can do a bit of both, which is interesting. How it all works out, I guess we're going to find out.
Yeah, and Tucker Kraft was on the board. So Tucker Kraft was still available, and he's a tight end. When I did a short, I kind of ranked some tight ends who could do both, because I didn't want a pure pass catching tight end. I wanted somebody who could do both, especially if we're going to bully ball. Let's have a guy that we can keep on the field. I know we're going to rotate, and it's going to be exciting. We're going to have Ferguson. We're going to have Hendershot. There's going to be a brotherhood. They're going to be electric. They're all going to get their touches. They're going to get their touchdowns. It's going to be fun to watch. There was something about that last year that was exciting, because you saw them all enjoying to play together. And I think you're going to continue to see that. But the fact that Schoonmaker can block as well, and it's not really going to tip our hand when he's on the field, that excites me. I'm looking forward to it. I have some more numbers. And I looked up, so John Owning, shout out to John Owning. If you're a Cowboys fan, you don't follow him, you need to. He does a lot of research, and he's with PFF now. He said Schoonmaker is in the 97th percentile for separation percentage on routes run. So dude creates a lot of separation, and 88th percentile in yards per route run. So he'll get deep. All right, he'll catch the ball, create big windows. The yak thing, the yards after catch, is where there's a little bit of question. But if he's creating that much separation, I think that there's room for development in the yak. And then now going back to Maisie Smith, there's also room for the guy's great against the run, but they believe he can be a pass rusher as well. I saw a lot of clips where he got in the backfield. He's got quick hands, and he got to the quarterback, and the quarterback got out of the way. But if he's getting there, and Micah's back there, DeMarcus is back there, and he's now, when the quarterback is getting out and moving, he's running into somebody else's hands. You're going to see him get some sacks. And I think the Cowboys were discussing, they didn't like the stance he was in at Michigan. It wasn't much of a get to the quarterback stance. It was more of a anchor, push the lineman back into the backfield, disrupt the run. So you're going to see them mess around a little bit. But now, back to Schoonmaker, I'm excited. I think that the fact that they went with him over Kraft, who I believe Kraft was a top 30 visit, makes me believe that they didn't necessarily just go with the last ditch effort. They went with the player they wanted. And maybe they were trying to keep that away from, was he a top 30, Schoonmaker?
I don't believe so. I think he was a combine interview.
I wonder if they were kind of keeping that close to the hip to hope that nobody would take him away from them. Because you look, after he went, Osiris Torrance went guard, right? If they were going need, that was the selection. He was on the board, and they didn't take him. All right, so let's keep it moving now. Camp, they go with DeMarvion Overshown, linebacker, who I got to see at the Senior Bowl, was a converted safety, played safety. I believe he's a 4 or 5-star prospect coming out of the University of Texas, coverage guy, and he showed off that ability last year. He had 0 touchdowns allowed and 322 cover snaps in 2022. So you're going to be able to see him on some nickel. I wouldn't be surprised if he plays some big nickel safety for the Cowboys, especially in 2 or 3 years' time, because Jaron Kearse, Malik Hooker, I believe they're only on contract for 1 more year, even though now we got Donovan Wilson for 2 or 3 more seasons. So I'm excited. I think he's got upside. This is a big, big upside swing, big athlete who needs some development in his pass rush. But I saw he showcased swim, spin, some strong pass rush moves out there at the Senior Bowl. So what were your thoughts on DeMarvion Overshown out of Texas?
Yeah, this was a guy that I flagged a few weeks ago, that the minute that teams started releasing their lists of who they were having in for an interview, this guy was seeing so many teams. So there's something that the football community sees in this guy that makes him look like a football player. So if you're going to make a kind of pick like this, it's quite interesting for one of two things. It gives me confidence in the player because so many teams are interested. And I flagged too, like it kind of felt like to me that his draft position had gone up for the simple fact that there was so many teams interested. So I think probably to a certain extent, the third round was probably high for him, but I don't think he would have lasted much longer. So it's going to be interesting to see. And sort of, as you kind of briefly mentioned before, like I would pay so much money to be able to spend some time in a war room with Quinn and Will McClay sitting there talking through this process, because I think the Cowboys have made that decision that they really want a strong defense. And, you know, if there's anyone that I trust on defense, it's Dan Quinn. I think he's had several years now of really putting this team in a great position. And then obviously he's had a lot of experience before that. And then, on the flip side, Will McClay's done some really amazing things too with some of the, the undrafted players and later picks that he's managed to get for the Cowboys. So when they're picking these guys, and some of them to a certain extent is based off potential, or, as you talked about with Smith, is, maybe the footwork's not great. It makes me think that they've seen something there that they can really work with. And it's something that they can, maybe they might not come out and they might not be, the greatest player, they might not be the Aaron Donalds of the world or the Micah Parsons of the world, but someone who can really contribute at a high level and make those key plays at certain points is what I think you really want to aim for from a Cowboys point of view. And as I said, I feel like the NFL community was interested in this guy. Dan Quinn obviously saw something that he's interested. So I'm interested to see what happens, whether or not it's year one or it's year 2, year 3.
Yeah, and the Cowboy, so he's 6'2.5". He's only 229 pounds, so he's a little light. His vertical was 36.5. His broad was 10.4. His 40 was 4.56. His 10-yard split was 1.55. So all very strong numbers besides the weight. So this guy can move. He's a big-time athlete. He's a chess piece. I'll be very interested to see how Dan Quinn moves him around. So you talked about Dan Quinn, Will McClay having success. Where they've had a lot of success has been in the 4th round. You look back at the past 4th round selections, the Cowboys have had a lot of success in the 4th round. This year they take Viliami Fehoko. I hope I pronounced that right. He's the cousin of Vita Vea. He's an athletic pass rusher that won the 2022 Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year award, accounted for 16 sacks, 5 forced fumbles in the last 2 seasons. They're saying he's high motor, position flex, can play inside the defensive line, outside the defensive line. Per Todd Archer, Fehoko appeared in 49 games. He took snaps at linebacker, defensive tackle, and slot corner, and he speaks Tongan. So it's always good to have a guy like that on your defense. So what are your thoughts on Viliami Fehoko?
Yeah, like it was a pick that was like, once again, so the Cowboys basically had everyone in for either a top 30 visitor or spoke to them at the combine. So everyone they picked except for their last 2, they had spoken to. And so this was a guy that they'd spoken to. So he was definitely sort of on the radar because he was a top 30, I believe, top 30 visit. And this was the kind of the pick that actually, once this was done, it sort of seemed to be that the belief was that the Cowboys had a pretty good pick here. So it was, yeah, I sort of expected at this point that they were going to turn over to the offense. I felt like they were going to start trying to find some more offensive guys, but I can only presume that they looked at the value and decided that defense is the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, this was a very, very defensive-heavy draft, so it'll be excited. We got the meat. We got Jonathan Hankins. We got Maisie Smith. We got now Fehoko, he's going to be the guy who's, when Maisie comes off, you're going to be bringing in, we got a Oso Digizua. I think for the other interior defensive lineman, I'm drawing a blank. Neville Gallimore. I think this might be a little bit of a wake-up call to him, because last year I think he didn't even get suited up for some games. So if he doesn't do well, I wouldn't be surprised if he's shipped out and this guy takes his reps, because this is an aggressive, high motor, get after the quarterback, physical guy with position flex. So after him, I'm going to just run through some of these names, and then we'll get into some undrafted guys. I see Nino's in here, and he's all about the undrafted life. So we'll get into that after we make these selections. So Asim Richards, offensive lineman from North Carolina, per Michael Gelkin of Dallas Cowboys, 6'4", 309 pounds at the combine, 34-inch arms, 10-inch hands, 82 3/4-inch wingspan, good athlete, concluded his career at North Carolina with 34 straight starts. He was a Senior Bowl participant. The 6th-round selection, we went back to defense. Eric Scott Jr. gave Kansas City Chiefs a 2024 fifth for the first pick of the 6th round. And per David Hellman, only Julius Brent and Joey Porter Jr. had a longer wingspan than Eric Scott Jr. All right, so he cracked 80 inches. So this is Dan Quinn special. And then the tearjerker special was the next selection. Deuce Vaughn, Kansas State. What do you think about that, Camp?
Yeah, like it's so interesting, wasn't it? Because I know there was a lot of people out there thinking, oh, the Cowboys are doing this pick, just for the sentimental reasons. And, firstly, even if that's true, I kind of feel like when you're talking the 6th round is essentially a dart throw anyway. So even if it was just a sentimental pick, I think I would be happy with it. But what's been interesting is looking at a lot of the feedback on it. A lot of people have been saying that this guy can do some really good things. He's obviously very small, and he's probably always going to be a gadget guy. But I do think it's going to be interesting to see how they can actually find a role for this guy and what it is.
Yeah, and that all but ensured to me that there's a possibility Zeke comes back. I think he's going to be another chess piece, another weapon, not used as much as a DeMarvion Overshown, but they're going to find a way to get this guy some touches. Like we were hoping Kevontae Turpin would come in last year, get some of those touches, but this guy in an offense is more fit for those touches, I think, than a Kevontae Turpin. So if you didn't hear the story, the Cowboys assistant director of college scouting, Chris Vaughn, supposedly called his son a few selections before the Cowboys took him to kind of console him, like, hey, everything's going to be all right. You're going to get selected. And then boom, the Cowboys selected him. And he's been a Cowboys fan for a long time. Like there's pictures of him as a kid coming to Cowboy Stadium with his father. And but he's more than just that story. That's the story we hear this weekend. He's an electric player. He is very good with the football in his hands. He's ran like a 4.56 40. So it's not necessarily the top end speed that's elite, but it's the cuts. He's got electric cuts, and he's so hard to get in the open field. So if we can find a way with new offensive coordinator Mike McCarthy, who's going to be helped out by Brian Schottenheimer, to get this cat the ball in space, watch. He's electric, and I think probably like one electric play a game is what you can at least expect from him, and that's sometimes it's enough to shift the story of the game. So let's keep rolling through here. After that, 7th round selection, final pick, Jalen Brooks. He's the only player the Cowboys didn't have an interview with. So I don't necessarily know. He's a wide receiver, so I don't really know how the Cowboys found this cat. I don't know much about Jalen Brooks. I don't know if he's necessarily going to make the roster. We got the wide receiver room. We know Michael Gallup's there, Brandon Cook, CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Tolbert, but Noah Brown's gone, right? So there's some room there to be coming in. So maybe he's a big-time pass blocker, but this is something we're going to be seeing throughout training camp, the rookie mandatory training camp, OTAs. But do you have any insight on Jalen Brooks?
Well, no, just the feedback has basically been he was essentially he was someone they were really high on as an undrafted free agent. So it was really just to sort of jump in front of the queue for that. They felt that if he was an undrafted free agent, there'd be a bit more competition. So that was, I think, the reason for picking him there. Just going back to Overshown, though, it is interesting to note that the Cowboys lost a couple of guys from their special teams unit.
Yes,
over the offseason. So someone like an Overshown is going to be probably, like, even if he's not playing a massive role in the defense early on, I think he's going to be a massive benefit for that special team. So right. It's going to be interesting to see, if there's any guys in this, and usually you're looking kind of at linebackers or safeties or that kind of thing, but whether or not there's any guys in this draft who are going to help, fill out that special teams unit.
Yeah, and back to Vaughn. So Justin's asking if he's a special teams guy. I think he's more than a special teams guy. He was a 2-time consensus All-American. Like, this dude can play. All right, I know he's short. He's 5'5", but he was a 2-time consensus All-American 2021 and 2022. At Kansas State, he set records for most receptions and most reception yards by a running back. So what I mean by I think Boston Scott, like the way Boston Scott's another undersized guy, but he's still finding ways to get touches in the offense. I think the Cowboys are going to find ways to get Deuce Vaughn touches in the offense. I think Kevontae Turpin is their special teams guy. I think you'll see some Vaughn on special teams, but I think you'll see more of him in packages on the offense. So let's go now to some undrafted free agents, and we're going to start with Hunter Luepke. I think that's how you pronounce it. Fullback, North Dakota State. On the draft show, I heard them mention him a lot. He's got an injury history, but Jim Nagy said he's the best fullback to come out in the NFL draft in years. We know Mike McCarthy loves a good fullback. Think of John Kuhn out there in Green Bay. Ezekiel Elliott's gone. The short yardage ball carrier is gone. The lead blocker is gone. We've seen them rotating offensive linemen in the backfield at times to get that lead block. And I think you're going to see Luepke take those. He was an offensive weapon for the perennial FCS powerhouse that lined up at fullback, tailback, tight end. He accounted for 6.3 yards per carry and 13 touchdowns on this as a senior on the Bison. So, Campey, what are your thoughts on Luepke?
Yeah, look, it's going to be interesting because it felt like to a certain extent the offensive lineman as a fullback was a real kind of gimmick that was obviously by our former offensive coordinator. So it will be interesting now that McCarthy's sort of taking charge again, whether or not we go back to a sort of more classical style with a proper fullback. So it would be interesting to see whether or not they do have that fullback, especially sort of more like for goal line plays and stuff, rather than make it a bit gadgety, just have someone out there who's actually sort of, a bit more comfortable in that blocking spot.
Yeah. That's what he's done. Like, that's what he does. So I'm excited too. I think I like the direction this team is heading towards. We have big time playmakers, but we also have like just strong football guys. And this guy seems like a football guy. I'm going to mention Earl Bostic, the offensive tackle out of Kansas. He was a converted tight end, made the transition to the offensive line after his freshman season, made 29 starts at tackles for the Jayhawks. Then we also have Princeton Fant, who Nino was talking about, a big red zone mismatch with the size and physicality. He would use as a pass catcher in short yardage situations in Knoxville. He was also used as a ball carrier, 6 rushing attempts. He scored on 5 of those as a senior. Are there any of these undrafted free agents you want to discuss before we wrap this thing up?
No, look. So obviously none of them have officially signed, I don't think. I think they've all got an intent to sign, which apparently, as far as the NFL goes, doesn't really mean much until you put your name down on paper. However, like back to what we were talking about, it looks like guys who immediately could come in and help on special teams because you've got a lot of guys who are wide receivers, linebackers, that kind of thing. So, yeah, look, it's going to be interesting. I know that your guest a few weeks back, Config Cowboy, was saying that he really loves this list of undrafted free agents that they got so far. So he's really impressed with them. So
they usually do a good job of bringing in undrafted free agents, and they have a little bit of pull. That's when they can flex some of that financial ability they have, and that's where Jerry Jones can pick up the phone and sway. That's where he kind of takes over. So I like it. All right, I got a few questions I want to ask before we wrap this thing up. Who's going to play left guard?
Well, it's interesting because it sounds to me like they really want to get Ball in there and give him a look at guard. So they've moved him in from tackle and they're going to basically have him in at guard to see how he goes. Now, the thing about Ball dropped down, I think it was the 4th round when we picked him up because of character concerns. However, he's always been a pretty good football player. So whether or not he's someone who can slide into guard for them will be interesting to know. And I think I would not be surprised if he's one of the ones to get an early look in when the preseason rolls around.
All right. I know we have OTA workouts begin May 22nd. All right. So that's in about 3 weeks. We're going to see these players roll in. We're going to start to see them and we're going to see what the Cowboys think about this offense when we start to roll out the offensive line. And we'll have a really good idea. I think it's possible we see Zeke return. I don't know when, but maybe June, July when they're getting ready for training camp, because that might be a shot in the arm. That might be something exciting. We've seen crazier things. And by crazier things, I mean Tom Brady retiring, unretiring, retiring, unretiring. So Zeke coming back, I don't think would necessarily be the craziest thing that's happened the last few off seasons. Do you think Jalen Tolbert is the surefire wide receiver for the Cowboys? Do you think they believe in him, or do you think it just was a weak wide receiver class and nobody fell to them?
Well, just back to Zeke for a minute. I'm not sure if it was DallasCowboys.com or somewhere else, but somewhere suggested that Jerry had said that the door had been closed on Zeke coming back. That was today. And that was
really
based on the draft selection. Now, if you're going to tell me Juice Vaughn and Zeke Elliott were in the same category, except for the fact that they're both running backs, then I really
Jerry said the door wasn't closed.
Oh, did he?
Yes. He said the door was, because I was going to say, Jerry, that's not something Jerry would say.
Well, there you go. Okay, so that makes a lot more sense to me because, like, yeah, I sit there and I think, well, I could see us, because Zeke still has a really good sort of spot that he could fill here by just being that guy to just get those hard, 2-3 yard runs when needed. So I still think, I feel like the players would like him back, and I feel like he would have a role here. So the longer he sits around.
Here's the exact quote. As far as our interest in Zeke, nothing we did today changes that. I haven't ruled out Zeke.
See, that's what happens when you speed read, obviously, right? Because I was reading it thinking he's a madman. Why did the decisions today make any difference? But now you're saying it back to me. I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Right. Yeah. Because I couldn't see Jerry doing that. But Camp, on a scale from 1 to 10, how excited are you to see these rookies put on a uniform, go out at training camp and OTAs, and see where they fit into this 2023 Dallas Cowboys roster?
I would say an 8 or a 9, because unlike other years where it's been almost an excitement for the season to start, this year I just want to get them on the field and start taking reps so we can start getting feedback on how they're looking.
Right.
Because, like, for instance, a CD Lamb, we always thought CD Lamb was going to be good. But these guys, I want them out on a field. I want them with the Cowboys coaches, and then really see what happens from there. So I want, like the first couple of weeks of the OTAs and that kind of stuff, you want to start hearing that, these guys are, they already look the part, maybe they're not doing all the stuff that they will be later on in the preseason, but, just starting to look the part, and, the coaches have noticed this, coaches have noticed that. That's what I'm really I'm waiting for these guys to get out on that field.
Right. Macy Smith is giving Biotish and Tyler Smith fits, and I'm with you. I'm about a 7, because, this class isn't super exciting, but I'm excited to see them. I'm actually excited about Lepke, the fullback. I think that's going to be fun. Deuce Vaughn, that's going to be fun. But man, it's been an absolutely incredibly long process going through all this stuff, and I'm excited for the 2023 season. I'm excited to see where the Dallas Cowboys can go. And one thing that seems different this offseason, I'm not happy the Eagles have done so well. I'm not. Okay, I can't say why would I be? But I am kind of happy that they are drawing all the headlines, because usually we draw the headlines and then the Cowboys start drinking their own Kool-Aid and we underperform. And they're not taking the headlines this offseason. They can't. If anyone's given them the headlines, they're idiots, because what Philly's done, they absolutely deserve it. They went to the Super Bowl. Their roster is absolutely loaded. So the Cowboys shouldn't be in that conversation. They're not there yet, but I'm glad they're not. I'm glad they're not being put in that conversation, because now they can put their head down and go to work. I think McCarthy likes that too.
Yeah, and like, I think it's one of those things, like, it's as you said, they're in a position where the spotlight isn't on them, but then the flip side is they've really got no excuses going forward. Like, McCarthy said, all right, I'm going to take the reins of this offense. Quinn's been there for 2 years now, going into his 3rd year, really has an opportunity to, like, he's obviously picked guys in this draft that are his guys. Mm-hmm. So between them, they've had that time now to really mold this team to what they want. So the excuses go out the window. If the Cowboys fail this year, well, it's going to come back to the coaching staff, isn't it? So it's going to either the defense fails, and then maybe Quinn's not the golden child for every coaching position that opens up, or the offense fails and then McCarthy's probably out the door. So it's been a funny draft, and it's been a weird offseason where they've plugged holes, but they haven't made those splashy signings that, maybe you thought the Cowboys would do 15 years ago. However, yeah, like that, they feel from a momentum point of view, they really feel primed for some good things. But, I'm sure a lot of teams feel the same way after the draft.
Yeah. Well, hey man, it has been fun. It's been fun covering the Dallas Cowboys throughout the draft process with you. I'm looking forward to some more episodes, getting to cover these guys throughout training camp and OTAs and getting their jersey numbers, getting their equipment, getting to see them at the Star. And hopefully we can get some other guests on. I know, like I mentioned, Kyle Yeomans is considering coming on if we can swing that. But Campey, I appreciate you. I appreciate you helping me, run this thing. And everybody, if you're listening, I appreciate you listening. And check us out, Toilets of Titles, the Toilets of Titles Network. We got tons of content, tons of shows. We've been covering the draft. Now we're getting ready. It's fantasy football season. Like basically it's it's Dynasty rookie season coming up. And we're going to be talking about our Frankenstank listener league. So we have tons of stuff on the verge. Like we are ready to roll. So make sure you're subscribed, you're tuned in, because we have you covered on all things NFL draft, and fantasy football going forward. So we will catch you all later on. Take care.